Michael, for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your most recent book, talk to our audience about your views on China. On the tips of everyone's tongue lately has been the rise of China. Of course, it's growing at a breakneck speed. There's concerns about different segments of its economy. What talk to our audience about your view of China and the role it's going to play over the next 10, 20 years?
Well, I think it's certainly the threat. It's the up-and-comer, but my views on the world are slightly different than others. I don't see a sort of straightforward handoff from the U.S. to China, and I don't mean that literally a handoff. I mean from the sense that, you're going from one, world power to another. I think there's going to be a sort of a dark period, a wilderness period where no nation really is kind of ruling the roost. Long term, I think China is the growth story, but that long term I think goes out several decades. In the short run, I think one good parallel I heard was that China is a bit like where the U.S. was before the Great Depression. I think they have a tremendous economic and social calamity ahead of them, but they'll come through it and actually be on top of the pile. But I don't think they're going to escape unscathed, and I think it's going to be trouble all around.
Turning back to the U.S., one of the problematic areas as well has been the U.S. real estate sector, obviously the commercial real estate sector, the residential real estate sector. Banks, according to recent data, repossessed almost 270,000 U.S. homes during the second quarter of 2010, and vacancies and lease rates at U.S. shopping centers are continuing to get worse during the second quarter of 2010. So what's your view or outlook for the United States real estate sector? What do you expect to see over the? Are we getting ready to turn the corner, or are you expecting this is not the bottom yet?
Well, I mean, it's always tough to predict with absolute certainty where and when the turning point is. But based on everything I've seen, I don't think we're anywhere near a bottom. I think we probably still got another 3 to 5 years before we come close. I mean, I do, like I noted, see inflation as a serious issue down the road, and I think ultimately that will benefit real estate, but I think real estate will be last to sort of jump on that train because of this tremendous overhang, because of fundamentals that really haven't been resolved and are really being sort of extended and pretended by government policies that haven't let the market clear. So I think it's the supply and demand situation is just horrendous right now, and I as a sort of market person, I can't see how it doesn't mean anything but lower prices and a much rockier market still to come.
I think most of us are probably very glad we're not politicians right now or in positions of leadership, because it would be highly difficult. If you were, in the final question now, Michael, if you were in a position to begin to make fundamental economic changes right now in America, and in an effort to get this nation back to a place where it was productive again and where it was becoming the backbone of a global economy, not based upon its consumption only, how would you do that? What are some of the fundamental changes that our policymakers today can make that would produce lasting changes?
Well, the problem is that the one that actually has the most problems is the one that's least likely to occur, and that's to actually bite the bullet and recognize the problem areas. There was a kind of a model for all of this in terms of banking crisis, for example, that we saw in Scandinavia in the late 90s, and that was essentially, sort of close down the bad bits, get rid of the people who caused the problems, wipe out the people who supported them, i.e. the shareholders, and really restructure things to prepare for a move forward. And the reality is that we haven't done any of that, and I think if we did that, then there would be hope. But right now everyone pretending that it's all going to be better and throwing lots of cheap money and heavy debt loads are going to somehow resolve structural problems that have been sort of decades in the making is a complete fiasco, is bogus. But I do think, under those circumstances, if there was essentially a widespread recognition of reality and an acting upon that perspective, then we might have hope.
So perhaps some sacrifice at the very, very top, and then having that fall down, basically willing to accept the facts that as they are, basically, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and just say, well, look, saying we were really in tough shape. We've had, decades of bad policies. Right now, we're essentially experiencing the legacy of that. And the only way we can move forward is to sort of recognize that and to sort of engage in a bit of triage, essentially kill off the sick bits, and hopefully the bits that are left survive and thrive. Unfortunately, that's not the kind of thing we're going to hear from a politician in the U.S. or anywhere else for that matter.
Michael, if our listeners would like to learn more about you, more about your work, or buy your book, how can they go about learning more about what you do?
Well, I have run a couple of blogs, both of them named after my last two books, Financial Armageddon, which was published in 2007. That blog is still going pretty strong. It focuses on domestic concerns. And also have one called When Giants Fall, which really takes more of a sort of geopolitical, broader international take on the world, again, named after my 2009 book of the same name. But you can catch me at either place.
Michael, it's been great to have you here. Respect your work, respect you, and appreciate what you're doing to help open people's eyes and wake up America. So keep up the good work, and I appreciate you, and hopefully we'll have you back on the air soon.
All right. Thanks very much for having me.